gonna say, when everybody sees one, that might prompt people to ask, but. Yes. And you.
This is the regular meeting of the Common Council, City of Oneonta, April 4th, just about 7 o'clock. And I'll call the meeting to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Mayor Jenna.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Ritzberger.
Here.
Councilmember LaFarishu. Here. Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember After.
Here.
Councilmember Falco.
And if you join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. We have presentations galore, which is great. We're going to start with the event and street closure request for 2023, the second annual Blendorama 3-on-3 basketball tournament. Do we have anyone here to speak on this?
So am I going on the TV or?
That's it.
I can, if you, there was, I can just go off.
There we are.
Alright, I kept it short and sweet, I can pretty much talk about everything, so last year was the biggest hurdle, was having the first annual event. I actually wanted to cancel the tournament last year because I only had 50 teams, I wanted to have 200, I had specific goals for myself. Looking back now, if I would have had that many teams, it would have been chaos because I wouldn't have had enough people to man it. And I think that with the inaugural year, there was just a certain amount of teams that everyone had a good time, there was no significant issues. And I'm gonna get a little bit off track, but I'm just gonna go off the slides here. Next slide. So it's my logo for the tournament here. Everyone gets a shirt that participates in the event, so that goes into my team fee. I don't think I put my fees on here right now. I'm getting teams registered. I charge $80 for early bird registration, and then after May 1st it goes up to $100. But I also work in conjunction with getting teams sponsored and having some teams play for free. So my recent progress. So I submitted my safety demonstration to the New York State Troopers. So last year I had that in my original plan to have them come and work in conjunction with OPD and everything else, just to have a stronger police presence, but also, you know, kind of bridging the gap between, you know, authority and youth recreation events. So they had issues last year with an overabundance of people for the Hall of Fame weekend. So this year I made sure not to have the event on the Hall of Fame weekend. So they're very interested and eager to come to be a part of this event. Same with Mr. Devlin with Otsego County Sheriff's Department. So I think that'll add some we already have police presence from OPD, but I think different entities will help with what I'm trying to accomplish. So some of my biggest risks are not having enough volunteers. Obviously I'm concerned about not having enough teams because I do this primarily by myself. I get funding and I associate it however I kind of see, but at the end of the day, I'm usually just banking on that. I don't have to spend my own money to get this thing rolling. So last year I only had one significant injury. Someone got pushed and stepped the wrong way, tore their ACL, but besides that, no significant injuries. And obviously the weather is a big issue, but I'm also working with, talking to the Boys Club about having an emergency alternative place. Next slide. Sorry if I'm talking too fast, I just don't want to take up anyone's time. So.
You're good.
So I had 50 teams in 2022. I think that throughout the day there was around 1,500 to 2,000 people. I could be wrong. Maybe it was 750 to 1,000. Does anyone have any feedback on that?
It's a lot of people.
A lot of people there. So for the most part, I have gotten a lot of good feedback from it. I have tried to stay optimistic and unbiased about it. I know that some businesses, basketball doesn't really, the basketball niche or crowd, I guess, might not want to, I don't know, might conflict with certain arts or certain things. I don't really per se, but I can't guarantee that every business is gonna flourish from this basketball tournament, but as much as I would like for that to happen. So I'm gonna, next slide please. So for this year, how I wanna progress from last year is I wanna have at least a minimum of 150 teams. Last year I didn't have teams registered until June. I've already got teams registered now, and all the teams that won last year got free entry, so they're all coming back. So this year I'm going to be the vendors myself. I had some issues with trying to collaborate last year, so this year I'm going to have a food truck. I'm trying to have 2, maybe 4 food trucks. I'm going to talk with Greg and figure out how that'll work, because I don't want to overwhelm or underwhelm certain parts of Main Street or businesses. So garnering program support by recruiting more volunteers, trying to get local schools involved, nonprofits, different things like that. So I mentioned some of the improvements I'm trying to make for year 2, along with the teams. So next slide. So I do want to figure out how to make businesses happy besides the pizzerias and food places. So I'm going to go there personally and figure out. I remember days when being younger when we had sidewalk sales or different things, and I've been really trying to push this event as not just a basketball tournament, but more of like a festival, but disguised as a community tournament. So like mini games and all a bunch of different types of things. So something for everybody, and free events for kids under 5. So right now my biggest concerns are financial issues and summertime commitments, because even with just running my own recreational programs, a lot of people want to play and they have good intentions to play, but then certain things happen and it just doesn't always come to fruition. I really want to ramble on. Let's go to the next slide. So my schedule, this is what the weekend looks like. Next slide. So I'm going to have to set up around 6 o'clock. I think the setup for last year's tournament went pretty smooth. I only had 7 courts. I ran out of tape, so that sent me back for Saturday because I had to go buy more tapes. I was setting up from 6. I think I finished at maybe 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So it took me 6 or 7 hours to set it up, but I only had 2 people. So next year we should be this summer should be a little bit easier. So tournament play will start at 8 o'clock. I'll schedule games to start at 8:30 because we're gonna have registration and it's gonna take a little while for people to process in. But registration is pretty smooth for the most part. This year I try to go against the Gusmacher model. So what they do is they have their all-star and the community celebration at the end of their day 1, which is Saturday. So I'm gonna have a break at 12, and maybe I can just get on the speaker and say it could be like designated lunch hour, so people can know that there's not any games going on, so they don't miss anything, and they can come back to this event. And I run a recreational program here for 10 years, and a couple of people haven't played anymore, so I just want to do a little mini ceremony. It's kind of like a place where I'm going to bring all the former basketball players to rejoice, and I'm taking a lot of time. So I believe the tournament breakdown I had issues with last year. I was supposed to be done at 7, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to be done because I don't want to have issues with people coming to be done, and next thing you know they're waiting around for 2 hours. So I think that I won't be done with the breakdown until at least 9 o'clock on that Sunday. One of the big things that I noticed I didn't put in the slides was I'm going to need another dumpster. I had it overflowing garbage cans. We're going to need to make sure, keep an eye on that, and I'm going to get some extra porta potties. But besides that, I think I've got it under control. So next slide. I'm just going to figure out who my title sponsor is. I have traditional sponsors. I usually only go around once per year because I don't want to be a professional beggar, but in a sense that's kind of what I am. So yeah, I'm going to get my sponsors, and then I'm working on the social media campaign and really going full force with flyers here in the next couple of months. I got a grant last year from Otsego County Tourism, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to receive that again this year before I go full bore, because that's part of the requirement is they need to do my flyers. So yeah, I'm trying to do everything I can. If anyone has any questions.
Council, I have questions.
I've got So there are, you're 100% right, the restaurants do well, and the retailers don't do as well. And I think that's probably something that's correctable, because you do have a ton of folks that will be coming down, and maybe something as simple as a coupon sheet or something where they can find themselves, you know, in the various retailers with a reason might go a long ways. And also it would be probably something like that would be great will, not just goodwill, but great will in the business community. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's just, it's a photo op, to say the least. It's a great marketing asset. It's a great thing to be able to say, look at the vibrancy of our main street. Not every business is going to make their top dollar every single day. On occasion, there's going to be something that happens that's going to be impactful. We can talk about, though, how we might be able to make that less impactful to them, and maybe even a positive thing. So we can have some conversations. And I know the other thing I want to mention was, although this is obviously ideally something that is a profit generator for you, that part of this that is not, like for instance, Ballot's houses, something like that, where it's just a thing that's, you know, an added, you know, component, but it's not putting a dime in your pocket. It's probably something you could apply for an OCI grant for, just something to keep in mind.
Yep.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Great. Well, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, which brings us to talk about great events. The City of the Hills Festival.
Hello, I'm Hope Stengel. I'm Executive Director of Kano and the Director of the City of the Hills Festival. Actually, the City of the Hills Festival is what brought me back to Kano. I don't know if anyone here attended the festival last year. It was extremely well attended. It coincided with one of the Parents' Weekends, Suni Liliana. We guesstimate that maybe 6,000 to 8,000 people came downtown. Businesses were very happy. Restaurants were really happy downtown as well. We got tons of positive feedback. The vendors were extremely happy. We had about maybe throughout the day and evening, 20-some musicians, almost 50 vendors on Main Street and at Kano. This year we would also like to have the event on Main Street, but 2 days, the 16th and 17th. And part of that decision was because a lot of vendors like 2-day festivals, they prefer it, and businesses, they responded very positively when we asked whether or not we should have a 2-day festival. I just found out what this meeting was about this morning, so I'm not as well prepared maybe as I would like to be, but if anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and ask. It's a really good community festival. Last year we tried to include downtown businesses by, we walked up and down Main Street several times and asked what they wanted to see, how they wanted to participate. Huntington Library participated, OWL participated, GOHS participated. This year, Suni Liana is going to participate in the festival. It's not just about the arts, it's about the community as well. So.
Before I turn it over to the council for questions, I just want to say that it is, I don't think it's arguable that that is the best festival that we've had in years, the past years. So thank you for that, and I'll open it up to comments or questions.
Which month? Which month?
September 16th and 17th September.
Are you looking at following the Colorscape model, essentially?
So no, the issue with Colorscapes, according to vendors and some of the businesses in Norwich, unfortunately, some of the food vendors are directly in front of the food businesses. So we're going to have, this year we are going to have some food trucks, but we don't want to have many food trucks because it competes with downtown restaurants. And I just don't think that's fair to downtown restaurants. This event is about downtown Ileana and Main Street. I've worked on Main Street for many years, so it's really, really important to me that we make downtown businesses happy, that it's a very profitable day for them. And also, one other thing that vendors complained about, and I used to be a vendor for many, many years, I had my own business, was that there are too many vendors at Colorscapes. So when there's 100 vendors, not all of the vendors do well. So we'd like to keep it at around 50 to 60 vendors, no more than that. They have over 100. So our model is a little bit different. Our model is also different because, again, trying to incorporate all of these different organizations and groups throughout downtown. So yeah, so our model is somewhat different than theirs.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you very much. Hope we're looking
Thank
forward to
you.
it. And we have one more, and this 2023 event and street closure request is for Pride Fest.
Yes, yeah. So, hi, I'm Elaine Mosher-Campoli.
Kirsten Eggers.
And we've been involved with Otsego Pride Alliance since the first Pride Fest in 2017. Up until this point, we have done it mostly at the park, except for, pandemic years when we did some virtual stuff instead. But looking at this year, we wanted to try to do something a little different. Try to do something that was a little possibly more accessible to more people, and also, bringing in more of the businesses. We have worked with some, downtown businesses and heard from others that they would, like to be more involved in Pride Day somehow, but that it was very difficult because the event was held so far away from those businesses. So we envision, Pride Fest, starting off with the Pride Parade. There would be an opening ceremony, some award ceremony, a memorial, and entertainment throughout the afternoon, bands, a family-friendly drag show. I'm forgetting something there. And we have vendors come, as well as community organizations, local as well as some that come from a little further away to share resources that are specific to the LGBTQ community. And we have kids activities. I know we've already reached out to Huntington Library about doing some coordination with them during the day. And we're looking at ways to involve the downtown businesses too. I know that we've had some of our members go and talk to the businesses about different ideas. Like one idea we had about, having businesses stamp a sheet, and they said, no, that's not actually their preference. So we're reworking, how we would approach that, but that's something that's important to us too.
Right. I know that we use businesses downtown for fundraising a lot, and they always appreciate our business. And I think this will just, reach out to more businesses in that sense.
Well, Council? Dave, 2 questions. What's the date of that?
June 3rd. Yeah, so we started off, when we planned the first Pride Fest in 2017, we started off with the intention that it was going to be the first annual and that we were going to continue to do it every year. So we've stuck with the first Saturday of June has been, traditionally the day that we do that.
And about how many people you typically have every year?
We have gotten up to 1,200 recently.
Was last
Yeah.
year.
Yep. Subaru is our lead sponsor again. They've supported us right since 2018, the second Pride Fest that we did. Once they, knew that we were getting involved with that, they supported us. So they've been our lead sponsor ever since then, and we do get sponsorships from other community organizations as well.
Mark?
That was the question, was the date. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it. All right, with that, we now turn to petitioners and public hearings, and we do have a public hearing for the 2023 Community Development Block Grant application. And have we anyone here to speak on that? Or? There is not. So we'll close that public hearing, and we have a public hearing on the ongoing Community Development Block Grant Project Administration. And do we have anyone here to speak on that? And we don't, so we'll close that as well. And we'll move on to our boards and commission reports, starting with Parks and Recreation Commission, which I believe is Councilmember Parshu.
It is. Parks and Rec met yesterday, but I wasn't in attendance, so if it's okay to push that off to the next meeting, if you have to watch the video, if you don't want to report.
We could do that,
Okay, thanks.
unless there's objection. We could do that.
Okay, cool.
All right, moving on to our committee reports, our Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee, Councilmember Risberger.
All right, thank you. We met on March 27th, We had a very full agenda. And it started off with the deer management. We had Mike Clark and Celinda Brandon from the New York DEC Region 4. They had possession of the Deer Management Task Force recommendations, but not the additional information that the task force had been working with it as well. They came because they still had some concerns with the recommendations and suggested a working group for their issues to be discussed and settled. Some of their concerns included what steps were taken to come to the current recommendations. They felt that permits to have for culling were the last option and wanted to know if we considered other solutions and what were the results. They also suggested that the recommendations from the task force could be multi-sectional with a subsection consisting of a culling program. They had questions about the city ordinance on discharge of weapons. What is our attainable goal? What's our end goal? There were a few other questions as well. They also suggested that we go through the secret process if we do end up choosing the option of having a culling program. So we left that meeting with, they are going to meet with the DEC, the DEC is going to meet with the task force to respond to the concerns and make adjustments to the recommendations before bringing it back to the committee. Park service fees. The question came about because there were concerns about the cost to the various larger groups that were, event groups that we were going to have this year, and whether they were going to be able to pay the dollar amount to pay for the portable toilets. So we were wondering if this could be funded through OCI funds, ARPA, or through Housing Vision's loans payback. So Greg was talking with Judy, and they ended up bringing it to the Finance Committee, and since I'm on the Finance Committee, I can tell you what we decided. We voted to remove the park service fees for 2023, and I'll leave the remainder of it for Katie to report on, but that is on tonight's agenda. 5K race course, we have a new 5K race course in Neola Park, and the purpose is to hopefully decrease staff workload and reduce the cost with the various 5K races that we have throughout the city during the year. So we had a sample course that was shared with us. There were some concerns that the course could be unusable for wheelchair racers unless one section of Catella Park is paved first. There's also a possible choke point near the beginning of the race course as it turns along the mill race, so that may have to be adjusted a little bit. Greg told us that it's probably not going to be possible to use during the winter if there's a winter race, but it would be able to be used the rest of the year. So Greg's going to be looking into funding for paving that one section, probably about 100 yards maybe, Greg, I think, in Catella Park, and bring it back to the committee. West End parking. Let's see here. This came about because the tax service on the corner of Chestnut Street and West End Ave, when they're busy, their parking lot fills up and then the overflow goes to the street, which sometimes blocks driveways, but it also makes it really difficult at the end of the school day or the beginning of the school day when buses are coming back and forth. And it creates a choking point at the end of West End Ave. Len also reported there were some concerns from citizens in that area about excess speed on the street as well. So that may be coming back to, at a later point, to discuss the excess speeds in various points in the city. So what we decided, and this is, I believe, on tonight's agenda, is changing the no parking from here to corner sign. That's going to be moved back. They're going to lose about 4 spots on the streets, but it's going to improve the safety of the intersection. Honorary street naming policy. This has been a discussion that's happened for a couple meetings at least. This goes back to the group that wanted to change one street name in Oneonta in honor of a former SUNY Oneonta soccer coach. And we realized we didn't have any policy on record to how to do that. Up until now, everything that we've done has been changed in the parks. So we looked at a sample, made some adjustments. I sent it back out to the committee. They made more adjustments, and then I passed it along to Mr. Merzig for processing. He suggested that it could be made into an ordinance, and once he does so, he will send it back to us, and at the committee level, we'll have a final discussion and then bring it to the council. Trash bin storage or communications to residents. Councilman Davies brought this forward. There were concerns in the neighborhood from residents who can no longer store garbage cans in front of the house and wanted to know how people would be notified about this. And we realized that that portion of the code is not new. It's been there for a while, but we don't always realize it. But what we can do is have Nixle used to notify people about the garbage cans. The trouble is, we decided is, or discovered, is that not enough people in the city are signed up for Nixle. I think we all need to do a little bit of work on signing people up for Nixle, especially Luke in Ward 1.
Yeah, well.
I'm kidding, Luke. Your ward had the highest number of people signed up.
Sign factor of.
So, about 10, yeah, by quite a bit. And then Main Street closures. There's been a lot of Main Street closures this coming year and past years, and according to Greg, we average about one a month, and that includes the parades. And typically, these are initially approved by the council the first year and then approved by the city clerk in following years. Greg is going to be putting together some new guidelines and suggestions, some of which would include requiring porta-johns, keeping one lane open for emergency vehicles, obtaining information from businesses to see if the event helped or hurt their business, bring the approval for the event to the council for the first 2 years to allow for a review of the event, keep the number of events to approximately one event per month so we don't overburden our staff, especially in the summer. And Main Street closures would be for events with approximately 1,000 or more people. So Greg's going to finalize a list of suggested guidelines and bring this back to the committee for a policy to be voted on. And let's see, State Street and Hazel Street traffic patterns and speed. People are using this area as a cut through to avoid Lower East Street when heading south on initially East Street. So they've been cutting from East Street to Hazel Street to State Street. It's also possible they're coming down Normal Avenue as they're cutting across the city as fast as they can. So the question was brought up about designated the area around State Street as a school zone due to Bugby with the reduced speed limit. So Greg and Chris Yacobucci are going to check to see if this is something that's even possible to do. And then the last thing was the Wilbur Park Master Plan, and that one we tabled because at that point we were already going for an hour and a half. So we'll put that on the next agenda.
Typical light agenda.
Yeah.
Questions? No. Well, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. And we'll move on to Councilmember Lepori Shu and our Finance and Human Resources Committee report.
Okay, we met on March 30th. We first received an airport update from our airport manager, Terry Harrington. She gave us a document that had the status of ongoing and upcoming projects, where they are, what their obstacles might be, and their funding source. So that was really helpful. We also discussed just declaring ourselves lead agency on the seeker for the partial parallel taxiway. So that is motion 5 on the agenda tonight. Once we do that, unless any other agency objects to that, then we'll do part 2 at a future council meeting. We also got the update on some RFQs. There were, I have 3 here, but I thought it was only 2. That's okay. We'll read through them. We received 5 responses to an RFQ regarding Lettuce Highway bike and pedestrian improvements. And we may have a firm ready to recommend. April 18th, at the April 18th meeting. There's an RFQ out for the water treatment plant and distribution system upgrades. Those are funded by Bill and Leah funding. The responses for that RFQ are due by April 7th, which is in 3 days. Oh yeah, and then we also have the RFP for the CDBG private-led water services replacement project. We got an update on that from Community Development Director Jude Hangman. 130 properties have been identified that are eligible under the grant. And again, hopefully we'll have a recommendation on that by the second meeting in April. Just some information on that. Once we have the funding, the administrator for that grant will market it to those 130 eligible properties and try to get the residents to apply. And then we provide the funding for the replacement on a first-come, first-served basis. And there's more detail to it, so there's probably more information on the community development page of the city website. We discussed funding for marketing and public art. That was kind of an FYI situation, because it's all kind of comes under the umbrella of DRI funding that had previously been allocated for marketing and public art. We did have a discussion on that, just in terms of understanding what the priorities are and sort of how those numbers came to be. We discussed accepting a donation. It's $1,000 and it's unrestricted, and I don't know. Yes, that's motion number 6. We got the quarterly staffing update, which now has names of all the city employees, which is really cool, so thank you, Greg, for doing that. That's always very insightful. That I think is coming to our email sometime in the near future, so everybody look out for that. There's motions 8 and 9 on the agenda are the establishment of the part-time EMS management specialist, which is a previously approved position. This establishes a standard workday, which is a civil service requirement. And then there's also motion number 8 is the creation of a new position for admin and coordination for the water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, and lead service grant projects. They'll assist between public works and community development, and I believe that that's an entirely grant-funded position for several years. As Dave mentioned, we discussed park service fees. That is motions 3 and 4. So motion 3 is requesting that we strike that particular portion of the fee schedule that we approve annually. This section is new this year, but for this year we're going to try to strike it. And then number 4 addresses the funding aspect. Finance Director Lee had a suggestion of how to be able to fund the necessary restrooms in the park without passing that cost onto the users this year. So basically what we're going to do is Housing Visions. The Housing Visions project was advanced money by the city. They're paying us back over 20 years. We receive approximately $13,000 annually. So we are transferring those funds to the general fund for the purchase of funding the restrooms in Yellow Park. And then we got an update on the homestead tax exemption, which we have been looking into. Again, I say we, I've done a little bit, but the lion's share was done by city staff. And unfortunately, it's not going to achieve the purpose that we had hoped, and it would create like a huge administrative burden. So we've looked into it and we'll move on. That was it.
Again. So, comments, questions, anyone?
Question. Katie, did I hear you correctly on motion number 8, that is funded by a grant, and you said for several years?
Yeah, I want to say at least 2 years. Question mark? Judy's shaking her head. Yeah,
Yeah, do you want me to?
please.
Okay, so, yeah, right now, we have 3 grants that will help to cover that cost. The water treatment plant project, the wastewater treatment plant project, and another project that will help us identify more lead lines. we're building in what's called force account on each one of those grants, which is a budget line item for staff. We're not gonna just go in for this, staff person, we're going in for other staff people as well, so that, we can start getting that fund built up as we go, and we can make sure that we're gonna access all of the line item through all the staff to help cover that staff person. We also have a few other projects that we're gonna be trying to get funding for over the next few years through the bill funding and the EFC state revolving funds. And those will also help to continue to cover that salary.
Thank you. Also, motion number 7, how is that working with regards to the individual that's in this position, his salary? How does New York State Civil Service, how are they distinguishing that?
That's a question.
We don't have an individual in this position right now. This is a part-time, the new
I
position.
apologize, I thought this was, I thought our fire chief was handling this.
Oh, his stipend is for emergency manager. This is the part-time position that we established this year as emergency management specialist to assist with updating.
Okay, this is someone that's assisting fire chief. Okay.
Not yet filled, I think soon would be filling that, but we adopted or created that position at the last council, but we forgot to include the language of establishing that standard workday, which is why there's another motion on tonight.
Thank you, Greg.
Sure. Any further questions? Any other questions? Okay, all right, well, thank you very much, and we'll move on to our Community Wellness Committee report, and Councilmember Davies.
Thanks, Mayor. The Community Wellness Committee met last night. We had a short agenda, but some robust conversation. First, we heard from citizens that were concerned about the closing of Fox Care Fitness. They cited quite a bit of data that pointed to the fact that Fox Care Fitness has served older population. 72% of the people that participate or are active members there are 50 years or above. They had concerns about the impact that closing the fitness center would have both on the availability of places to work out. Many of the other gyms are not, in their thinking, suitable for folks that are 50 years and plus and older. They also had concerns about the mental impact. A lot of folks feel that there's a community here, and they kind of find their kind of purpose by interacting with the other community members that have been going to Fox Care Fitness for many years. They would like to move forward a resolution, and we read the resolution at the meeting, and we are going to be bringing that forward, so I'll be sending it on to you. I want to make sure that the draft I have is the final draft, but I'll be bringing that to you, Greg, for inclusion in the next common council meeting, and I can certainly at that particular time get a little bit more into the details of why the resolution and what their thinking is at that time. We also worked on to try to stay with our what we're seeing as a real purpose that we can have as community wellness committees, to organize community groups around some of the different kind of wellness related issues. So we are going to be organizing groups that deal with food insecurity. We're going to be having a meeting Tuesday, May 23rd, is what we've agreed to, 4 to 5:30. And we will be organizing the groups and doing a virtual meeting where we'll be discussing some of the challenges that these organizations are facing, what their needs are, trying to organize the conversations, as well as always looking at what role can the city play in supporting these particular organizations. And then we spent a lot of time trying to identify individuals or groups that we think would need to be at this particular meeting. So I'll be compiling that list and sending it out to folks soon. And that, by the way, that May 23rd is certainly open to all council members if they would like to attend. So that's about it, Mayor.
Terrific, well, thank you. Do we have any, yes?
I kind of got something there. Kind of goes over what he was just saying with Fox Care, with the gym and stuff. We've now, several community members have come up with the overall Fox structure. We hear it from our fire chief on how they have to just about go to Bassett Hospital for everything in Cooperstown. And we're starting to see strains on our workforce, calling crews and stuff like that. And I was kind of calling on you as the mayor to see if maybe you can have a sit down with Bassett and Fox and see if we can try to maybe bring some water back to this area. I mean, because we are the biggest population of the county, and I see that we're being stripped, and it's really starting to affect, and especially with more and more stuff we're being asked to step up and help with. So I didn't know if that's something that in your role as mayor, if you could.
Sure. So, I have a sit-down scheduled with Tomer Ibrahim on April 25th. That was apparently the earliest that he was able to see me, but we are set to meet on that date. And I suspect that I'll might have a few things to take to him by way of counsel.
I think maybe as a governing body, maybe we can try to step up a little bit and put a little pressure on the needs that we need down here and that need to be met.
And I suspect we'll be having more robust conversation on that on the 18th as you're getting back to us. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Did you mention, well, Congressman Mark Molinaro was talking with us the other day about that initiative?
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it wasn't a topic of conversation on the agenda, but we certainly discussed those comments and some of the approach. Quite frankly, I have not yet taken the time to look at what that Dutchess County structure was, but we did discuss that.
Are you gonna take the lead and ask Congressman, or at least the county executive for Nassau now or Dutchess to provide that information?
I'm sorry, let me just, do you mind? I did jump in during that conversation with the congressman, appreciate, by the way, the opportunity, and volunteered. In fact, I would reach out to folks, but I think we can probably work in tandem on that.
Yeah, he did pull me aside afterwards and suggest I reach out to people to get that information, whatever you might want to share. And yeah, it seems like it's a successful model. We, the committee, we have been really kind of struggling with, frankly, how enormous some of these wellness issues are. We've been looking at mental health, we've been looking at homelessness, food insecurity. There's just so many different things.
Sure.
And so it seems like this might be a good model. It was very clear to me in the conversations with Congressman Molinaro, and as I've been beginning to think about, is that the city needs to have partners in this, and partners beyond our community partners. We need to have the county as a partner in this effort, and I think that the congressman made that pretty clear as well. That was a county-wide effort, so I would hope that we might be able to think about how we might want to strategically move forward on this and bring our county representatives into the conversation so we can work together, because to Scott's point, in a different way, we bear here in this particular city the brunt of a lot of these particular issues, and we need the county supporting us on these.
Good to hear.
Further questions or comments? No, thank you very much for the report. All right, and speaking of reports, we'll now move to the city administrator's report.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick update. We had our first official community police board meeting on March 28th. In the future, I suppose I can move this to the boards and commissions report, as I'm the designated liaison. The board selected Ari Toby as chair and Bryce Wooden as vice chair. Board members to spend some time introducing themselves, sharing their motivations, goals for serving on the board. They talked a bit about the community police board creation document that guides what they're doing. They're each going to take some of the charges that were assigned to the board and review those, discuss further at the next meeting. Chief Witzenberg advised that most of the recommendations in the original CAPRIC document have been addressed in one way or another, and the CPB will review those at a future meeting. Generally, they talked about community outreach effort, data collection and analysis, fostering good communication between the community and the police department, recognizing OPD's good work while reviewing areas where improvements could be made, and focusing on community education. Their next meeting is May 23rd at 5 p.m. right here. It's good to have our first meeting. Get off the ground.
Wasn't it, though?
Yeah.
Long time coming.
Are we sharing those minutes?
They should be
On the city
shared
website.
on the city website through E-code as normal.
Anything further?
That was all.
Okay.
Questions?
All right.
Len?
Are there any questions, Len?
Greg, do you have an update on the New York State DOT project for Main and Route 7? That was that Culvert Pike Bridge project.
I spoke with the engineer in charge from New York State DOT just the other day. They're not, the contractor's been hired by DOT. They're administering that project for the city. They're likely not gonna start until midsummer, sometime over the summer, possibly not until the fall. They should be, I think they've been reviewing submittals. They should be ordering the culvert material soon. I guess it's up to the contractor's schedule as to when that actually starts. So he was gonna keep me in the loop on that. But once we get closer to actually doing some work there, I asked him just to make sure that Chris and I are aware we can go out with the contractor, meet with the homeowners who are affected most directly, and put a PSA out again, so.
That's Ward 1.
Yeah.
Is the traffic pattern basically gonna stay the same going down, I think, was it Rose?
Rose to Chester to.
Square.
Thank you.
Anything further for Greg? Okay. Well, we have mayor's remarks. So I got a few dates that I want to share with you guys, and so I would say if you want to grab a pencil. So on April 18th, our college students will be helping clean up Newa Park. So if you're in the area and you might want to just give them a thumbs up and a little love. On April 19th, it's going to be Newa Park. On April 19th at 11 a.m., there will be a press conference on the steps of City Hall. It's in promotion of the Keep Mohawk Valley Beautiful campaign. The Keep Mohawk Valley Beautiful is a 6-county New York State affiliate of the National Keep America Beautiful program. So this will be the 22nd annual Great American Cleanup, starting on April 22nd. It coincides with Earth Day. And if you missed the April event, no worries, because it's going to keep on rolling through July, actually. So, also on the 19th, there's an Earth Day initiative, Wetlands, Not Wastelands, in which a bunch of community volunteers will be cleaning up litter at the Oneonta Rail Yards. And everybody is welcome to that. Betsy and I will be there. There'll be a meeting at Roundhouse Road and Fonda Avenue on April 19th at 1 p.m., and that's going to be after the Keep Mohawk Valley Beautiful Kickoff Conference at City Hall, so if you'd like to be part of that. The citywide pick-me-up, I saw that on your Facebook page, Katie, will take place on Earth Day weekend, April 21 through 23. And this is sponsored by the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District. Bags and gloves are available, as they're available. And pick-up and drop-off can be arranged by texting 607-261-1784. Now, bags are collected. They can be, the litter can be dropped off at 56 Center Street. That's between Ford and Bell. Did I do a good job with your social media post?
Yeah, thank you.
On a similar theme, the annual Into the Streets effort is being planned for early May, and that is a huge cleanup effort, as you know. I'll get you the info on that just as soon as I have the details. This Saturday at 4 p.m. is the judging of the Canstruction contest at the Southside Mall. You guys are familiar with that? All sorts of canned food have been configured as sculptures for the contest. I believe they have 5 of them. And as they do every year, all of it will be donated to our local food bank. They expect to get 3,000 to 4,000 pounds of food on Saturday, and that's going to bring us up to about 50,000 pounds of food since SUNY began with the event. So it's pretty cool. Again, if you have an opportunity to stop by on Saturday. On Friday, April 14th, from 4 o'clock until 6 o'clock, as has been well publicized, our Welcome Committee will be hosting a reception for new arrivals and anyone who is interested in learning about all the various resources and opportunities that Oneonta offers. There'll be food and music and a chance to mingle and get to know our new neighbors. That's from 4 to 6 in the community room at the Southside Mall. And just a point of pride here, not only is this a fully volunteer committee, but everything, with just a couple of exceptions, has been donated, including the space. Obviously, I'm going to be there. It'd be wonderful if you folks have an opportunity to stop by too. The following week, we're excited about New York State History Day. I didn't forget you, Luke, which is coming to Oneonta for the first time, is it, Lou?
Yeah, it used to be in Cooperstown, and when you're done, Mayor, let me know. I have the link here to volunteer if anybody wants to sign up.
So it'll be hosted by SUNY Oneonta, and it's gonna be bringing a lot of folks into the community on the 24th. And as Luke said, he's got all kinds of information on that if you're interested, we'll share some links. Moving into May, later that month or in early June, we're planning a city government retreat of some sort. Details to be determined. Our plans for it are to be a staff and council planning session and an opportunity for dialogue. And as we begin to hammer out the mechanics of all this, we'll be sharing them with council, obviously. I'm excited about it, and I want to thank John Rafter for the suggestion. Thank you, John. And lastly, at our next council meeting, which is April 18th, as we've discussed, I'll be asking for an executive session to discuss the strategies and the workflow of the city administrator's annual evaluation. Just a heads up on that. And that concludes my report. Al, yes?
Just a clarifying question, the rail yard cleanup on the 19th, where is the parking for that? Is there a designated parking area?
You know, it's probably on a website. I'm not familiar with where it might be. I would expect probably there's parking, on Flunda Avenue there, but I can look and I can get that information out to the council. Anybody else have as long as, no? Okay, good. Moving on then, to the consent agenda. Motion number 1, that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held March 21st, 2023. Motion number 2, that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $211,467.61, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. Motion number 3, that the Common Council approves the 2023 fee schedule to eliminate the following park service fee. Event attracting 250 to 750 people, $495. Event attracting 751 to 1,250 people, $990. Event attracting 1,251 to 1,500 people, $1,240. Event attracting more than 1,500 people, $1,485. Events requesting 9 or more dates, $1,485. Motion number 4. That the Common Council approves the following budget amendments to fund the estimated 2023 annual cost for renting portable bathroom facilities to be placed in Eagle Park. From the Housing Visions Fund, increase CDS 2.9901.9, transfers to other funds, $7,500. Increase CDS 2.210, loan repayments, $7,500. General Fund increase A.5031, interfund transfers, $7,500. Decrease A.2001, parks and recreation fee, $7,500. Motion number 5, that the Common Council approves the following resolution, a seeker resolution declaring the intent to be lead agency. Whereas the City of Oneonta has reviewed the seeker full environmental assessment form, EAF, Part 1, for the partial parallel taxiway project at the Albert S. Nader Regional Airport. And whereas the City of Oneonta determines that said action is classified as an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review, SEQR regulations, and whereas the City of Oneonta determines that said auction is potentially subject to review and approval by other involved agencies under SEQR regulations, and whereas the City of Oneonta determines that it is most appropriate agency to ensure the coordination of this action and will provide written notification to potentially involved agencies for the purposes of conducting a coordinated review and making the determination of significance thereon under SEQR regulations. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Oneonta does hereby declare its intent to be designated as the lead agency for the action. And be it further resolved that the City of Oneonta's airport consultant, McFarland Johnson, is directed to provide notice hereof to the potentially involved and interested agencies seeking their agreement or objection thereto in writing. Motion number 6, that the Common Council authorizes the Director of Finance to accept a gift in the amount of $1,000 from an anonymous donor as a token of appreciation for the many benefits received from the city, and authorizes any necessary budget amendments for said acceptance. Motion number 7, that for the purposes of the New York State Local Retirement System, the Common Council establishes the standard workday of the Emergency Management Specialist as 8 hours. Motion number 8, that the Common Council authorize the creation of the full-time position of Engineering Projects Coordinator to be allocated to the Administrative Personnel Manual Salary Schedule Grade A-2. This position shall be considered salary exempt pursuant to the Fair Labor Standards Act and shall have a standard workday of 8 hours. Motion number 9, that the Common Council authorizes the following changes to the city code and authorizes the Department of Public Works to install the appropriate signs. Remove from 282-27 setback signs, West End Avenue, on the west side of West End Avenue at a point 80 feet from the intersection of Chestnut Street. No parking ear to corner, in quotes. Add 282-27 setback signs, West End Avenue, on the west side of West End Avenue at point 212 feet from the intersection of Chestnut Street. No parking ear to corner, in quotes. And then finally, motion number 10, that the Common Council approves the local law to amend sections C-15 and C-16 of the Charter of the City of Oneonta. This local law was laid on the desk on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. Are there any motions to be removed? There are not. Oh, there is. I'm sorry.
10.
10. Any others? All right. Do I have a motion to approve those 9? Len, followed by Katie, and call the roll.
Councilmember Martin?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Person? Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
And Councilmember Falco is absent.
Okay. So motion number 10, do I have a motion to approve? Luke, followed by Katie, and Mark, do you want to,
I actually had a question for the city attorney based on the new language. I read very carefully the proposed changes and noted the differences between that and the charter as it is, and noticed there was some interesting kind of word changing in one particular area, and I was hoping to have some type of feedback from the city attorney. I don't know how to proceed because I don't have that clarification here. That was particularly that in the section C-15, near the end, citizen advisory and other ad hoc groups, the mayor may create and dissolve citizen advisory and other ad hoc groups and appoint their membership with common council approval. That was what I wanted to ask a question. I noticed there was one thing that was omitted from there was commissions. And then secondly, there was the addition of appoint their membership. And again, I was looking for a comment for legal understanding of that particular.
so our city attorney is under the weather. He may be watching. Greg is going to give him a quick call and see whether or not he might be able to take your question.
Okay. He's under the weather, I don't want to.
You did.
You're on speakerphone. I'm assuming you heard Mark Davies' question?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So the question for you I have, Mr. Merzig, is in relation to that particular line. I just want to understand, what do you see as the process here? So the mayor creates and dissolves citizen advisory and other ad hoc groups and appoints their membership. I'm pretty clear about that. With common council approval, I'm also pretty clear about that. How do you read that process? What's the process there?
You're going to have to repeat yourself, Greg. I'm getting feedback while I was watching the tape, so could you repeat the question? Because I was hearing it twice.
Sure. So this is Mark speaking, Davies. So the line, the mayor may create and dissolve citizen advisory and other ad hoc groups and appoint their membership. all that's pretty clear. With common council approval, also clear. Putting it together, I'd like to understand what the process is here. What is the process as you see it for the creation of ad hoc groups or citizen advisory boards, I assume, and the appointment of membership? How does that take place?
Well, the way I believe it's envisioned was, as it says, that the mayor can create them and appoint them, but they're subject to approval by the council.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the ambiguity is in your mind.
Well, I just feel like it was the similar wording that we have in the current charter, but yet we still seem to have ambiguity in terms of the practices. So I'm just trying to see if this is unambiguous, so we'll have some clarity moving forward. In my mind, it's unambiguous.
That was certainly the intent.
Okay. So then the mayor would,
I mean, the words are what the words are at this point.
okay,
I'm not sure, as again, you say it seems unambiguous to you, it seems unambiguous to me,
great.
and unambiguous to the committee, which is why they approved it as it was written in that form. So, again, I'm not sure how I can answer your question exactly.
No, I think you've answered my question, that it's not ambiguous, so that if the mayor is going to create ad hoc groups or citizen advisory groups and appoint a membership, that the groups and the membership would have to come before the common council for approval.
Subject to approval. I believe that's what it says.
It says with common council approval.
Yeah, with common council approval.
Right, okay, so, thank
So
you.
actually, I wouldn't mind some clarification, if you're still there, Dave. So again, this is Mark, from the, in the creation of the ad hoc group, as presented to council, and the council approves that ad hoc group, is it your reading, the Charter Commission is here as well, that every time a new member drifts in or drifts out of an ad hoc committee, because that's what happens, that
Yeah.
with each member drifting in or drifting out, that is something that the council would vote on?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have it right in front of me.
Is that what you're thinking, Scott?
I didn't print it out.
Okay. Is that what the
Yeah,
Charter
because
Commission's?
when we were discussing it, it was the, when it all was brought to light was that the council would know and then approve it, so that's
Mhm.
how I take it.
So again, I'm with Mark, Councilmember Davies here, having a clear idea of the workflow is the ideal. So as I see it, and tell me, again, if this makes, the Charter Review Committee is here, present. If I see a need for an ad hoc group, one that I see a need for currently is for the entertainment that we're hoping will fill Muller Plaza over the course of these next 5 months. So that's an ad hoc group that would be working on that, and that would be inclusive of folks like Tom Brindley from the school district and members of Harvard College and SUNY and Kano and so on. So I would come to council and say, as a motion, I suppose, to be approved, that the mayor would like to create an ad hoc group to be working on the creation of an agenda of an entertainment schedule in some fashion for those 5 months within the context of Muller Plaza events. With sunset after their work is done, but that would be approved by council, and that would bring it to council. Council would then approve that, correct? Is that the way you see it? And then, so at the same time, I would say that the members that I would like to see on this ad hoc committee are, these various people, and independent. It doesn't matter if they're only Hunter or if they're in Timbuktu, my understanding of how that works. But, so the council would then, I might have 11 names, and the council would say, okay, most likely. I can't imagine why the council wouldn't say okay to that. So next month, somebody has a big idea that they would like to be a part of this. I would then, the next time the council got together, say that this individual would like to join, and the council would approve that. And if I had a couple of people who decided they wanted to that was actually more than they could take on, I should tell the council that those people are drifting out. That's fine, I can do that. That's perfectly
Just
fine. As
brings
long
it-
as I know the process, I can absolutely do that. Okay, fine. David, thank you very much. Please feel better.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, so I think that.
Just to follow, just that you can further clarify, so it is the intent of the committee that the mayor would follow the same process for appointing to ad hoc committees or advisory boards, the same process that we already have currently established with boards and commissions that are kind of permanently beneath the purview of the city. Okay, thank you for that.
With the exception, obviously, that they are not required to stay in that ad hoc group for any prescribed period of time. They might be there for a month.
They could be there for 2 days and turn around and say, this isn't what I want.
Exactly. Okay, yeah, I'm perfectly fine.
2 other points, friendly amendment, I don't even know how we make that, because it's been laid, but I think we're missing a word in that particular section, is citizen advisory boards, but that's just me. And then the question, though, is,
I have a follow-up to that,
the
sorry.
question is so in the mayoral general powers and duties, C-15, number 9, I noticed that it was during emergency, the city administrator will serve as the point of contact. On the surface, I certainly think that that seems appropriate. If you would mind elaborating on the thinking of the committee in terms of committee, I'm not sure, what thinking was with regards to the city administrator acting as the point of contact during emergencies rather than the mayor. It seems to be obvious to me, but I just want to hear what your thinking was.
You wrote this one.
Sure. So,
Can I take the first thing? So the word board was intentionally left out of that statement because there's a lot of conflation between boards and commissions and other types of groups. So we took board out of there to distinguish those
Citizen
two.
advisory groups is what you're
Correct.
saying, and other ad hoc groups.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was
there was
using
quite a bit
the
of discussion
original.
about the word board.
Yeah.
Commission.
Great.
Right.
So,
You all got down to details, all right.
Yeah. Okay.
so the expertise lies in the city administration position. And so the charter review committee felt that that was the natural flow, is that the outside agencies, I mean, Greg has a standing history right now of being able to interrelate with New York State Department of Transportation and other federal agencies and state agencies. And so that's what we're looking at, when that was reworded.
Thank you. Again, I agree with the logic, just want to understand what your thinking was behind it. Mayor, I think I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate the discussion and the clarification. So with that, if there's no further discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
May I just ask a clarify, so are we including the friendly amendment to?
Oh,
Just clarify that doesn't Okay. need to be a friendly amendment
Thank
because it is, the exact
correct.
wording is
Okay.
advisory
Just
groups.
making sure.
So thank you very much for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Right, so no need for that. So we'll move on to the vote on the motion.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Berger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge Shu?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco is absent.
All right, we move on to the discussion part of the agenda. Motion number 11, that the common council approves the 2023 event and street closure application for Blendos LLC for the second annual Blendorama 3-on-3 basketball tournament event to be held downtown on July 29th to 30th, 2023 as presented. The common council further authorizes the city administrator to make any necessary permit modifications based on future planning meetings with the city staff and the applicant. And do I have a motion to approve? Katie, followed by, look like somebody,
You can take
Mark,
your pick.
okay. And discussion. Any discussion?
So, just for clarity, I know David, you were doing the math on this. So these are 3 events that we had taken a look at in consideration to make sure that the Porta-John cost was going to be covered, correct?
No.
Not for, this is Main Street closures. So it's the Porta-Johns that we were
Strictly for the
talking
park.
for, strictly for the park.
Further discussion? Mark?
Yeah, and so my apologies to Cam when he was speaking, I meant to ask this question, but so Cam mentioned putting down kind of the courts on Friday night, but we do not have that included here. Is that part of the thinking, is that that the street would need to be closed on Friday evening so the lines can be laid down? Therefore, would this need to be July 28th through the 30th, or how is that taking place?
I think that's how we did it last year. I suppose, depends on how you read that motion. It says the event to be held July 29th and 30th as presented, so
What do we
as
do?
presented, the application, which would just detail that, or we can make it an amendment.
I just didn't want to be lost in the details if it'd be a problem if later on it was an issue.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I don't know if you have any thoughts. Last year, having the street closed, we closed it at Friday night through Saturday, and it seemed to go okay.
I don't know if that's an issue.
But I think that's the intent of that little blurb at the end, that if there are any modifications based on our continued discussions, we would just make those. I don't know if you wanna have Cam.
And just for record, the chief came up to me last year and asked, you know, if there was gonna be an emergency, the hoops are portable and there's enough people around that I can move the hoops to the side, so in the event of an extreme emergency, we could have that accessibility. I didn't mention that earlier.
Thanks, Cam.
Further discussion? None. Okay, so if the clerk will call the roll, please.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falco is absent.
Very good. Moving on to motion number 12, that the Common Council approves the 2023 event and street closure application for Community Arts Network Oneonta, Kano, for the City of the Hills Festival event to be held downtown on September 16th through 17th, 2023, as presented. The Common Council further authorizes the city administrator to make any necessary permit modifications based on future planning meetings with city staff and the applicant. Do I have a motion to approve? David, followed by Scott. And discussion on this? Looks good. Hope. So with that, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
And Councilmember Falco is absent.
All right, takes us to motion number 13, that the Common Council approves the 2023 event and street closure application for Otsego Pride Alliance for the Pride Fest event to be held downtown on June 3rd, 2023, as presented. The Common Council further authorizes the city administrator to make any necessary permit modifications based on future planning meetings with city staff and the applicant. And do I have a motion? That's everybody. All right, so Luke followed by Mark. And Mark Davies, and then we will entertain whatever discussion there may be.
I just got a quick question. This is the first time for doing this closing.
They've been in the park previously.
Because they were in the park, right, originally?
There was a parade though, right?
Yeah, we had had short street closures for the parade, but this is the first time we're requesting to have the event all day.
Yes.
Just a comment from me. I just wanted to thank you both for your efforts in putting Pride together. I think it's really important that we show that Oneonta as a community supports all aspects of our community, and I just want to thank you both for doing that.
Thank you.
Great. Any further comments or discussion here? No? In that case, if the clerk would call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
And Councilmember Falco is absent.
All right. We now move on to discussion of the parking garage ramp, and I presume I'll be turning this to you.
Sure, I don't know, Chris, do you wanna talk a little bit about, what you guys looked at?
Sure, so basically we took a look at the existing handicap parking spots that are on the top level of the parking garage. And there are 6 parking spots that, handicap parking spots that were eliminated due to the closure of the top level. So we looked at locating new handicap parking spots, looking to do 2 handicap parking spots on Main Street, 2 on Deach Street and doing 4 handicap parking spots on Wall Street parking lot. We looked at existing handicap parking spots and ramps near existing handicap parking spots. And really, there's only one handicap parking spot on Main Street. It's in front of the Otsego County building next door here that has a ramp, but the ramp is really not built for handicap parking. I think it was an actual ramp into the building at one point, not an actual ramp. So all the, yeah, I think so. I believe, so none of them have a ramp nearby. They're all 6-inch curb. So we were not proposing to do any curb cuts or ramps associated with any of these additional handicap parking spots.
I like the idea of doing this temporarily, at least until we settle the whole issue with our parking garage. But I think the 2 on Deach Street and the 2 on Main Street could potentially be problematic. If it's anybody that has a wheelchair, it's not going to be usable. They're going to have to go into the parking lot, one of the parking lots, because if they've got any kind of a lift, it's going to butt out into traffic, and it's not going to be safe. So I don't know if we can put more spots over in that parking lot instead of adding these on Main Street.
I'm okay with it. I think we could add more spots in the Wall Street parking lot. I just was trying not to take too many spots from Wall Street.
Right.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Are any modifications gonna be made to these parking spots in the Wall Street lot to make them like van accessible?
There was no plan to change the sizes of the spots.
Okay. Just put up a sign.
Just putting up a sign.
Oh, they're not going to be van accessible then,
Yeah.
because you need more than one spot.
But
Right.
clarification, there are already van accessible
There
spots
are.
there, right? So
Yes.
there's
Okay.
2 or 3 in that particular lot.
2.
Looks
Okay,
like-
it does.
Oh, yeah.
I saw it on the screen.
Okay.
So.
I suppose we could block out 2 spots for 1 parking spot, so it would be van accessible.
Yeah, because the spots on the top of the parking garage are fantastic for handicapped accessibility, especially if you need to have a van. So if whatever we could do to try to mitigate that problem temporarily, I think would be really helpful.
Okay.
Can I ask, was the Deep lot kept the same because of its distance from Main Street?
I'm not sure I can comment on that. Greg, do you have input on the Deeds lot?
Well, yeah, essentially, I think just given the proximity to the upper level parking garage, the most logical place would be the Wall Street lot, being as close as it is. Most likely the folks that are using the upper level of the garage are gonna try to go somewhere on that end of town, we were thinking.
Gotcha. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
And I think, one of the things we'll do is keep a closer eye and actually do some counts of how many handicap spaces are occupied at any given time. And I've been counting parking spaces in general, but haven't really focused on specifically handicap. But now that we have this, it's something we can monitor. We can always adjust again if needed.
Beyond just the handicap spots, I do want to mention, I did go count, I had a complaint about parking in the parking garage today. So there was no parking spots. I went there and counted at 9 o'clock this morning. There were 30 spots available in the middle deck, and there were 120 spots available in the basement deck. So I don't know what the issue was. I think they were upset that we were doing some work there, so we did have some spots closed off. My count did not include those spots that were closed off.
And you took the complaint before 9 o'clock when you went down there to look?
I was there the other day, in the middle of the day, and it looked full until I really looked. There's a lot available.
I did call the person back after getting the count done, and their main complaint was that they didn't want to park in the basement area because of pigeons. But I've noticed the pigeons are also an issue on the middle deck as well.
any further conversation around the ramp? In
So
terms of the, go ahead.
So in conclusion, we're gonna add a couple more spaces in the East Street block, is that what we're thinking?
Wall Street, right?
Wall Street.
Yeah.
And we want them to be handicap, or van accessible.
I mean,
I think we need to have at least, if the two that are there now are van accessible, I would recommend at least one more be van accessible that we're adding in temporarily.
Okay.
So that would be 3 spots, one of the 4, it would be down to 3 now, correct? 1 van accessible, and then 2.
Yeah, if we're gonna keep it the same square footage, instead of getting 4 out of it, it sounds like you get 3 with 1 being van accessible.
And so we've got a consensus of opinion that this is the direction we should go. Sounds like that.
And I like the idea of keeping count, see, 'cause I think that'll help us in the future
Yeah.
too, so.
It's not gonna be easy to do, but I
No.
think it's a good idea.
Anything further on this? Yes, Mark?
Yeah, no, I think there's consensus on the spots. I don't know whether I'm just recalling this incorrectly, but were we also gonna be looking at other, getting some other estimates on that? Was that part of the thinking about the last time? We were gonna try to
That's
see-
where I was going as well,
Okay.
because we were looking at, what are we in fact going to do? Have we made a decision relative to repair of that ramp, and knowing that there's additional repair, and as Jenny pointed out, we're tearing it down, but we haven't made a decision as far as I know.
No, we're still looking at a cost of potentially between $6,000 to $12,000 to repair that one beam. And that's not to say there won't be any further issues down the road with that ramp, the top deck, or other parts of the parking garage. It needs some significant TLC, and I don't know how much money we want to put into something that will be torn down
Yeah,
in
that's,
12 months.
that's what I brought up the last time, was to have somebody go around and look and see the bigger picture of, okay, well, if we're gonna put this amount of money into what might have to put in before the whole thing before we tear down, is it that really worth it, or should we just leave the third part closed off for the summer and use this as the trial, since we also have the people that are like, oh, we need a 3 versus 2 parking garage and stuff. I just would hate to put a lot of money in to turn around if we're gonna tear it down, you know.
My opinion, for what it's worth in this move, is that I couldn't agree with you more, Scott. The idea of throwing money into anything right now that is only for the short term, it does give us an opportunity to make kind of a real-time assessment of what having 2 levels of parking garage would look like.
I thought we were looking at beyond that one fix that we all know we have to do now, that you were going to be looking around to give us that's what you were getting at.
Yeah,
Mark?
exactly, that's
Yeah.
my recollection.
We were looking at, you had mentioned that there might be more to look at the last time we talked about it, so that's the number we were looking at, or waiting for, sorry.
Quite honestly, I mean, that number would be the rehabilitation number that was quoted by Wendell. That's
Yeah.
really what needs to happen to that facility.
It was like emergency, like, you found that, but it was like emergent, like if they walked and said, oh, this beam's starting to fail, so that's gotta, you know, you're gonna end up having to replace this next year because that's not gonna pass, or, cause you weren't quite sure if we had what we knew or what we didn't know.
My recollection was, that comment was, we don't know what else might deteriorate further. As of right now, we're not aware of any other conversion or urgent issues. Does that answer the question? I mean, I don't.
Were we taking a look, it seemed to me, I'm trying to recall our last conversation, that there might have been some expectation that we were gonna take a look, as best as we're able to, as to what the rest of that ramp looks like, and whether or not be looking at something, you know, that is an immediate need after we get done with this. It continues, as Scott's talking about, just, you know, putting additional money to something that we weren't tearing down.
I have to apologize, I thought we were pausing the ramp evaluation. I didn't do anything further on that.
Might very well be the case. I may
Um,
just not be remembering this correctly. Yes, Mark?
There's no need to apologize, clearly we're all confused about what the outcome of what we were gonna do, so there's no need to apologize, I think we're just trying to clarify what it is about what we were gonna be looking at, so I wasn't sure whether we were pausing or whether we were exploring, or doing kind of both simultaneously was kind of what I pulled away from last meeting.
I thought we were looking at, to get that ramp open, what is it gonna cost? And then if there was any other deficiencies that needed to be corrected, that we would address them now.
If we were gonna evaluate the rest of the structure, we should hire a consultant to evaluate the structure.
Right, I mean, I guess that's our consultant that came and looked at the ramp, looked at the entire ramp.
He looked at that specific location.
That specific location.
And I asked him to look at the entire ramp.
So to expand that and look at the whole ramp or the entire structure will incur a cost. We can get a quote from either that consultant or the consultant that's already done an evaluation of the whole garage. Obviously, it's just been 2.5 years since we originally did that. That's why things are continuing to deteriorate. But that alone will incur more cost as well. So I don't know what that would be. But it would be something. Yeah.
I think, what was the amount right now for that part of the ramp?
$6,000 to $12,000.
Okay, so $6,000 to $12,000. If we decide to pay for a consultant, that could be another, I don't know, 5,000 to 10,000 potentially. And if they come up with nothing, great. But what if they come up with 10 other items? And whether we do or decide to go with a correction in any of those, we're still at that point at least 10,000 in the hole. I would recommend at this point we keep the upper level closed. We're all looking forward to, not looking forward, but looking in the same direction, trying to get this garage closed, leveled, and rebuilt. I agree with what Scott's saying. I think we should keep the upper level closed and just keep moving forward and getting this replaced.
One more thing, as I'm recalling the conversation, there's a lead time, once the decision is made, that we do need, if we were to say, well, let's do a series of repairs, there's a lead time on the construction materials and the contractor that be required, et cetera, et cetera. There might be literally months. And we get closer and closer as we've made that commitment to the point where we're actually tearing the thing down.
Correct. We could be looking at 4 to 8 weeks to get the correct materials and get the contractor geared up to do the work.
So, yes, Mom.
So, Greg, I think you're the person to ask this question. Best case scenario, I'm just trying to really understand the timeline for the garage and if we're gonna be going that direction of removing the entire garage, which it seems like we are, what's the timeline? When would we begin this process? I do remember that it was gonna take a year, but when would we start this process? So I guess what I'm trying to ask is if we were to put a patch on it, how long does that patch allow us to have that open?
I think the recommendation from the structural engineer is that gives you another 5 years potentially. It's not gonna take that long for construction to start. I would think best case scenario, construction or demolition of some sort could begin sometime next year. Possibly the beginning of the following year, 2025. That's the best I can say right now without getting.
For demo or for rebuild?
For the whole project. I would hope that we'll be starting something next year, but I can't say for certain at this point in the design process. We gotta get a little further down the road to have a timeline from Wendell.
And when is Springbrook supposed to be up and running? Because the elevator, right, would be accessible for handicaps.
I think they said the elevator likely this summer sometime. The overall project, I think they're aiming for the end of this year, right? This year, that's what I understand.
So to keep on that particular point, thank you, Lynn, for remembering that, what's the access from that middle garage? And I think I know what it is, it's probably out the main entrance there, right? And to get over, I mean, is there access?
Not handicap accessible.
Not
You gotta
handicap
get back
accessible.
out of the roadway to get over there. So we would have to address that if we're gonna.
Yeah, I think that's something we should think about in our long-term planning here as well, is how someone might navigate out of that particular middle place, you know. Not ideal, but at least it's something else to add to those handicap spots.
Yes.
But just a little bit more on that. We ended up closing the third level down there in the winter anyway during snowstorms. So either way, we're gonna have to take that consideration on how to get handicap over to the elevator regardless. You know, so I'm kind of worried about that third level anyway, especially if we have to keep closing during the winter. We're doing it more and more every snowstorm now, so.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Got a lot of questions today. So Mayor, I understand that there's the ad hoc parking task force committee.
Yes,
I'm not sure
yes,
the name of
Craig
it.
is actually chairs that.
What is the timeline for that? I'm asking this because I'm wondering, should we be, it seems as though we don't want to have different processes. If we're considering the parking garage and what the future parking garage is going to be, and trying to understand that and size and scope and number of spots. But then we have this parking commission task force making decisions or recommendations. It just feels like it would be incomplete without the knowledge of what we have down, what the end product down at the parking garage is gonna be. So I just wanna understand what the relationship between the task force and this project, and how are they gonna inform one another so that we're making decisions and making planning with all the information and facts in place, rather than kind of, based on what we have now, which might not be what we have in a year from now, which we start now. So I just want to understand how those processes are working.
That's a good point.
Sure, like the mayor said, I'm chairing that parking task force, so obviously being intimately involved with the garage project, I'm sharing with the task force as we're moving along with the garage design, what that outlook is. So, currently looking at 200 to 240 spaces. We're looking at the future scenario of having fewer parking spaces. I think by midsummer, early fall this year, that design will be pretty well set as far as what the number of spaces are going to be. We're moving along with Liz, we'll have another presentation at some point. So I think they are moving concurrently. We are kind of, our first discussion with the parking strategy task force really dove pretty deep into the parking garage project. Everyone wanted to ask questions about that. So it is definitely a major consideration, and part of the impetus for people looking to pay parking is to pay for their garage. So I would say that they're moving in parallel. And I wouldn't see the parking strategy task force making a final recommendation that didn't coincide with the parking garage project.
All right, thanks for that clarification. I just was trying to wonder how those would be working together. Maybe.
That's a good question, Glenn. Any other conversations on this? It seems like we do have a consensus of council that we are probably, if I'm right, going to leave that upper level closed. Not going to spend the money in the short term to patch. Given the lead time on it, we're likely to be butting up against demolition date, in any case, or getting close to it. Do I have this sense of the council with that?
I guess I would just go ahead and go out on this. I understand about the lead time for construction material and getting a contractor, and I think that gives, to Scott's point, an opportunity for us to observe the need for that third floor. But I feel like we should always take care of our infrastructure. You know that, Chris. Try to do whatever I can to help with the water and sewer and streets and sidewalk. And the parking garage is just like that. And now after hearing that we're looking at demo potentially or possibly in 24 or 25, that is a long time. And I'm just thinking of any of the handicapped folks that would have to maneuver over to get over to the new Springbrook / City Arcade elevator to get up and down in that interim period. I'm looking at this also, and I was drawing a blank like you guys. Where can we get the additional spaces? Because you're right, the city handicap spaces are not going to work for somebody that's in a van, and for those of us that have spent some time in a wheelchair, it's not easy. For this, I understand there's $6,000, but we also have a consultant that told us that we have years to go on this parking garage, and it's going to take us years to work through this process anyway. So that's it.
Just to be clarifying, are we, as I understand it, we're most likely looking at 24. 25 would be if everything, you know, that we thought might happen in sequence didn't happen.
I can say 24 or 25 right now. I can't be more specific than that tonight, sorry.
Good enough. Dave?
I'd say if we're gonna repair it, Len, I think my thought is we kind of have to go forward with having somebody come and inspect the rest of it to see if anything else needs to be done. I mean, luckily, this was a surprise to us, but luckily nobody got hurt. So I think we want to cover our bases. If we're going to go ahead and repair it, I think we have to have somebody look at the rest of the structure.
So we're obviously looking at additional expense and then potentially the identification of additional work that needs to be done. Again, it's council's vote. Go ahead, Mark.
I just need to put this out there. I received a couple calls from downtown business owners this past couple of weeks. Why? I don't know, but I received them.
Mark.
There's just a lot of concern from these folks about the impact of if we were to kind of pause or basically not allow parking in the third floor, that the impact this would potentially have on businesses up and down Main Street. And particularly, I get that. I get that concern. I don't know the right answers here. I definitely don't like putting taxpayer money into something that we're going to strip out in another year or maybe more. And I recognize that we don't have a clear picture. But at the same time, I think we really need to be real thoughtful about how we approach parking downtown so that it does not negatively impact our downtown businesses. And so kind of one thing comes to mind, especially in the summertime, when we were talking about the wintertime closure of the third floor, and the summertime, we're just talking about all these different events that we're going to be supporting this summertime, and to me that's a natural place to park for accessing Main Street during these particular events. The road's closed, people want to get there, parking up and down the side streets is pretty filled. You get there about 1 and things are happening, there's a parking garage. So how do we accommodate both our events with regards to parking, and how do we accommodate our downtown owners? So one thing, I don't know where we're at with monitoring the parking along Main Street, enforcing the parking. Whether we'll have an officer able to do that this summertime, but I would say if we're going to have the short-term parking on Main Street, we need to enforce it. Not that we're not, but I think we need to make sure we are, so at least we can keep business patrons coming and going out of those parking spots. But I also would think that we need to have a little bit more thinking, very strategic thinking about what we do to support our businesses, because our businesses, many of them are hanging on by their fingernails. They really rely upon the summer months, the tourists that come through, the quick kind of, hey, there's a cute shop, let me just run in and see what they've got type of traffic, as I understand it. And I don't think we want to negatively impact that in any way. So I would say if we're going to be going this direction of restricting the third floor parking based on the safety concerns, and there are certain concerns, and your point is well taken, I do think we need to think a little bit more about those, about what we do and how we support our businesses. And I'm not proposing anything, I don't have answers right now, but I do think we need to be real thoughtful about that and maybe try to have a plan or a strategy that we enact over the next couple of months to support them through these summer months.
Can I just say something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So, you raise a really good point, which is that when Main Street is closed, 1, 2, 3, 4, so half of the additional accessible parking spots that we're proposing are gonna be inaccessible. It's like 42 to 44 spaces that are not available for parking during events that are downtown. So I just wanted to add those numbers into the conversation.
So I'm going to jump in real quick and tell me if I'm wrong on this. I actually haven't sat in on any of the parking task force meetings. It's done a good job. But so a couple of things. We should, with the technology that we have now, be able to get to a place where parking in a short-term spot like Main Street, for instance, in front of a business, should be something that would escalate in terms of the financial pinch of the person who extends beyond the timeline that has been set for them. So again, not having sat in on the parking task force meetings, I probably can say, we'll see, that somebody might park for free or for very little money for half an hour. But then after half an hour, that might very well escalate, because digitally we can do that, because you have the timestamp on things, and so you would wind up incurring a larger expense. And one of the values of the paid parking piece is that you're able to move people to different parts of the neighborhood based on the cost factor for them. So long-term parking might well be a little bit less expensive and further away, and you wind up being able to kind of have more of a strategy around where your cars are going to be parked and for how long. So there's that piece. Piece that I've been advocating for, and I don't know that I've got that I've convinced fully everybody in city government about, is the idea of Demoski Field, and we have a wonderful transit system, and to be able to determine some sort of a regular, every 10 minutes shuttle that also kind of rolls around Main Street area, basically like a little trolley. I'd love it to be a trolley. So that we are able to take advantage of the fact that now you're right in the park, and it's really a short walk to downtown. You could almost argue the case that it may be as close for you not to take the walkway through as the parking garage. If you were to come out on the Market Street side of the parking garage, for instance, you could make a case that closer to Nina's, being over by Demoski, as an example, Nina's. So I think there's some opportunities to be creative around where we can park, and how we can expedite people's movement from one place to another without them being asked to necessarily hoof it. So, go ahead, Mark.
Mayor, if I could clarify, and I appreciate the parking task force will be considering all this, but there's this space, right, between when the parking task force concludes their findings, they run through council, we buy the equipment, whatever. Right now, in that space, we have this summertime, which is a peak kind of tourist opportunity for many of our downtown businesses. We are now kind of moving in a direction where we're going to close the third floor of the parking garage, but yet we don't have a real thoughtful way about how do we accommodate the downtown businesses. And I'm not saying maybe there's no way, I'm not sure, but we're just doing this without the consideration of how that would impact. I would like to say that maybe we need to think about what that might look like and how that might impact, and that we're reinforcing our parking, 1 hour parking on Main Street, so that we're able to keep things moving. It's just that I don't want to be making a decision in a vacuum. I get it, we need to close it, there's issues, but yet this is going to have an impact. Is there anything we can think about that might lessen the impact, the negative impact on our downtown businesses? I think we need to consider that in our planning. I'm not saying this needs to be done right now, but we have this space of about the next 4 or 5 months till mid-September, where we're going to be having a lot of folks downtown. I think we want to take every opportunity we can to get folks to that they can park easily and access our Main Street businesses. We don't have the parking garage. What do? How do we facilitate movement of cars and folks being able to stop in there and use our businesses? I think we need to think about
So again, I'm not on the task force, but obviously you chaired. Is there anything that you can say relative to what you're strategizing, or do you see that being another step beyond where you are right now?
I mean, really, everything we're talking about, the long-term solutions are this. I think you make a good point, Mark, about talking about enforcement and maybe stepping that up, and strategically, Wall Street lot, Westcott lot, Main Street itself, there should be no violations during the busiest times of day, especially without the upper level of parking garage. While we don't need the number of spaces the upper level provides, we have more than enough there. It is the most convenient, one of the most convenient spaces. So I get that. I think that's the only solution we can look at for right now, aside from something like what we talked about with the shuttle. If and when we're able to demolish 27 Market Street, that can be a temporary parking area. Well, that's not going to happen before this summer.
I'm having conversations with folks as we know too. So.
Right.
Open up some spots. Scott, did you have something?
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'll stop, this will be the last one.
Oh, you're fine.
Thank you, Greg, for pointing out that strategy or kind of reinforcing that strategy. What I propose is that we just think about that, other strategies that we might be able to utilize short-term right now that would be able to, again, lessen the negative impact of parking for our Main Street businesses, whether it's a little bit more consistent or continual enforcement, or might there be something else creative we can come up with? I think that we're able to think about something and implement it consistently throughout these summer months to be able to support our businesses would be valuable if we're gonna be going this route of not allowing the third floor to be utilized.
I just wanna kind of bring us back home a little bit here, cause, so, we need more information to be able to make an informed decision. I think we can all agree on that. I think part of that is gonna be, Greg, how much can you or Chris get, how much is gonna be to hire a consultant to see what else is gonna be needed in the long run? Because I got a feeling once we go to one beam, we're gonna find something else and it's gonna snowball. But if we just get a price on how much it'd be for a consultant, at the same time, maybe for the next council meeting, if we can come up with a plan to address, like Mark and Len, with our business owners, maybe have somewhat of a start of a plan on how we might be able to accommodate getting people up to Main Street. Looking for the worst case that this thing's gonna be closed from now until we build a new one. I think that's a good place to start, and I think that's some information that we need to be able to make an educated decision on where to go next.
We can look, I'm not sure exactly what we're gonna get from a consultant. Like, we hired a consultant to look at the garage, and the recommendation is tear it down, rebuild it, and that's the conclusion. Specific, urgent, we could take probably a walk through, with a structural engineer, look at every beam, what that cost would be, to see if there's anything that's, in the immediate term. We can look at that. But an overall evaluation of the garage, I think, is already been done.
Yeah, I meant like, I guess my determination is that third level. You already know we got the ramp issue. We know we gotta close it down every winter because we have a load issue. My whole thing is I just don't wanna see all of a sudden we're gonna put this beam in and all of a sudden we're gonna come back and say, well, this whole third level needs to be closed permanently now, because we know we're gonna have to put in $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to keep that level up, that it's in such disrepair. So, I mean, I guess that's where I'm hanging my hat right now is just that third level, what's the structure underneath that third level, what's that third level look like? That seems to be the main, and I agree with you, just the main means of I understand we already did the whole garage, that's why we're in this spot. But I think that's just some information that we need to know, like how much would it cost just to get that part looked at, and what are we looking at overall for long-term with that third level?
So I've totally lost the sense of the council here. So the way I am seeing it, Len and Mark, and I might be wrong, but if we can keep that third floor open by doing a patch work on it now, and I don't know, cross our fingers, I guess, that we don't wind up having that is essentially, I believe that's, am I right?
I'm torn, I can go either way on that one. I see the issues, but I also see the impact, and that's what I'm struggling with.
I just think we need that information for us to make that decision. I think that's where the council is around struggling with, what's the right decision, what's the best decision,
So-
we kind of need that information.
So Greg has volunteered that for the purposes of a very narrow inspection, that being of the ramp, that we might go through and just take as best we can, the consultant or with with our staff, however, that we can come back with maybe a better idea of what the actual safety concerns might be for the ramp, and we can project from that what the cost might be. So that would be something that maybe we bring back on the 18th. Does that sound good, Chris?
I will contact a consultant and get them going on getting us a quote.
Yeah, we'll do what we can. I don't know if we'll have it done by then or not, but we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll try for the 18th, and if not, then, I'll get the 4th be with you.
And we're only going to evaluate the ramp, or are we?
Am I right that we're right now, our concern, for me, say, quite honestly, it keeps me awake at night, the idea of somebody, injuring themselves for the fact that we have a ramp, a garage that's falling down. As it is, we have sections that we have to close off because we have concrete coming down, right? So it's not a great deal that we got going right now. So there's a safety concern, and there's also, I'm with you, Mark. I mean, I think I made my bones as the downtown guy, so I get it, the impact on businesses. I really do. And perception of parking is almost the same thing as what parking actual availabilities might be. There's an educational campaign that needs to happen, but I get it. So I think as best as we're able, we're agreed that we'll look at just assessing the ramp. Try to get that information back for the 18th, if not then the first meeting in May. And then maybe with that we'll have a better idea and maybe, Chris, if I can ask, maybe we could determine some sort of projection on timeline if the council on the 18th or the 4th, I think it might be, of May, determines that they want to do a series of patches or even a single patch, what we might be looking at in terms of that actually being, fully realized construction, done and people able to drive on it. So maybe we can have that for the next time, or, soon thereafter. Does that all works for everybody? Yes, ma'am? No, that works. All good? All right, good. So then we'll move on to additional business or council discussion. Have we any? Yes, Glenn?
You got it up first.
I'm sure I'm no different than anybody else sitting on this side, taking phone calls about the council talking about the university zone change. Did we have that up, some information on the website, our city website? Nothing? I swore I saw information on it last week about the university.
Other than what's been discussed at council.
Okay. Is there any way of, ultimately, anybody that owns property, say on Cherry Street, that section there, if it was a student rental, it stays, right? I thought I read the inclusion, as long as you're not making a major change, it would stay as a student rental / short-term rental.
So the university zone as it stands now is reducing the permitted uses in the zone. It's not eliminating rentals, it's actually making that zone reflect what's there more clearly. Many of the houses in that zone already can do student rental is fake. That's not a real term. Any house in Oneonta can be utilized for student rental. There's no such thing as a student rental or a family rental or that's a term people use. We do not zone based on the type of individual who's living in a house. The area that is currently being rezoned to U was formerly an MU2, which is much more dense and is a commercial district. Our rezone is just literally making that section of the city actually reflect what's currently in existence in that section of the city. It is allowing some properties that could formerly not do short-term rental, do short-term rental. Many of the properties that cannot do short-term rental in the U zone are adjacent to properties that can. So as you go up the street, you'll have a house that can do short-term rental and the one next door can't. And then the next one down can, and then the next one can't. So what we're doing is we're essentially cleaning up a bad zoning job that was done the first time. Hartwick College was given a use variance to do short-term rental. So one of the largest parcels in the U zone already can do short-term rental thanks to a zoning variance from the ZBA. The only property in this entire zoning scheme that will really not even significantly change, but will be brought into the zone that is not, is Hillside Commons. Because Hillside Commons is essentially being utilized as a dorm.
So University Transect number 1, which encompasses West Street and
Yep.
Clinton, those uses that are in existence today won't change.
Correct. In fact, it will prevent a McDonald's drive-through from being installed
You
there.
gave that scenario where
Right. So it will actually protect those zones so that they actually reflect what's there. Instead of being like, yeah, let's build a Walgreens on West Street.
Right.
So there's no, we've had people come into the office and ask the same thing. We are not changing the makeup of who's renting there, who can rent there, who can't rent there. There's a couple properties in that area that will be able to do short-term rental that formerly could not, but they're literally butted up against properties that already could do it anyway.
Are we legally able to put the proposed map on the website so that the general public can see what we are?
It's a draft map. It's been provided to the council. It's been put in packets. It's, I
So
mean.
it's something that could be put on the city website for people to look at.
Sure. There's a draft, yeah.
Might help.
Luke?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to something that we talked about at the very beginning of the meeting. Yeah, there's still time if anybody here, council, audience included, wants to be a judge for History Day. It's a fun event. I've done it a couple of times. It's last day to register is on April 13th. So still have about a week. But if anybody's even interested, the website's ny.nhd.org.
He briefly talked about yesterday on April 24th, where and when.
It's gonna be up at SUNY Oneonta. And the exact times, and I think a schedule is on that website as well, which includes things like lunch. Yeah, ny.nhd as in dog, .org.
Any other business or subject for council discussion? All right, is there any correspondence? There is no correspondence. Is there a need for an executive session? None? In that case, action. Adjourned.
So,